Hey, welcome to my podcast. I'm Manina, and you are listening to an episode of Aspire Big, Inspire Bigger podcast. Hey y'all, welcome back to Aspire Big, Inspire Bigger podcast. Today I have the first male guest. You're the first male guest. Arshay.
Oh, wow. Oh, what a privilege. Thank you.
He's an author, a husband, a dad, a chef.
Retired chef.
A retired chef. Don't do that. Arshay, welcome to my podcast. Thank you for doing it for me. So I just wanted you to tell us a little bit about your story. Aspire Big, Inspire Bigger is all about uplifting, especially youth. For me, it's about young ladies who have maybe encountered things that I've encountered or even deeper. I talk about it a lot on my channel. And so I just wanted your perspective on life and things that inspire you so that we can inspire the generations after us, the people who are listening to this.
Yeah.
So just tell me a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so again, Arshay, I was born and raised in Chicago. And, Chicago, you hear a lot in the news, right? What's happening in Chicago, right? They're the things that we hear about that are bad that is happening. Also some good things that are happening, but the Chicago I remember from the 90s was a community that had many gangs, right? And, the big question was not what college you're going to go to, but what gang you're going to join. And that was because, when there's so many gangs in the neighborhood, people are not joining because they just want to join. You're like, okay, if I don't have no gang, I would get beat up and I have nobody to help. So you had all these young people thinking, I have no choice, right? And I think one of my friends said something that was really powerful. He said, when they tore down the YMCA, I ran to the streets. That's where I found love. Because there was a YMCA with 150 kids. That's where you found coaches, mentors, counselors. And then when they tore it down, when there was no more funds, no more resources, there's 150 kids in the street. And then the gangs go to those and say, hey, I'll be your counselor. I'll be your friend. I give you what you need. And so here's all these young people in this neighborhood. And there was a lot of gunshots, right? A lot of losing friends. There was a lot of skipping over pools of blood. We've seen what most soldiers have seen in war, but before we were 15. And although there's a big push for treatment for soldiers, but we saw it every day, and there was no social workers in our school. There was no one to talk to, and you see right away when there's a mass shooting in a suburban school, they send all these trauma counselors in right away. And I remember saying, God, man, I remember being young and witnessing that all the time and never talking to anyone about this pain that we feel every day. And so that's what it was like going to school. Had to be tough, had to be strong. And then, my mother, for a while, was a drug addict, right? She dealt with a lot of trauma from her parents who grew up in the South, who experienced a lot of racism, right? And she had to deal with their trauma. And the way she did that was alcohol, right? And alcohol abuse, and she had an addiction. And I remember, just not seeing her sometimes days at a time. And I would go to school, and I'd do my work, and the teacher would be like, maybe just upset and be like, what? People will call you dumb, and you're like, how can I worry about who discovered America or what's 20% of half when you don't know if your mom's going to come home when there's no food on the table, right? That's your mind. That's what you're thinking about, right? Or you're going to get beat up after school. You're going to get chased. You can't really focus on that, right? And so that's the kind of conditions that not only me, but the people in my neighborhood lived in every day. But I remember one point my mom going into a Christian recovery home. And I remember my brothers and sisters would go visit her, and I never went because I was just so upset because I felt like I didn't have dinner or a middle school sweetheart because of her addiction. And I remember one time finally going to visit her after months, and she was singing on stage, right? And she gave this testimony on how that, she was just abused as a young girl and went through so much and had no one to talk to and felt helpless and wanted to kill herself until someone came to her and gave her a flyer and told her that she can change, that she can find hope. And I remember hearing that, and that changed my heart, right? Seeing that kind of hope for the first time, because I believe that God exists everywhere but the west side of Chicago. You know, you watch TV, and they like, I bought a new house, God is good, and oh my God, there's healing, God is good. And I'm like, well, that stuff's not happening here, so maybe it doesn't exist on the west side of Chicago. You know what I'm saying? And from there, my mom got home, and I remember it becoming like a praying family, and she would reach out to people who was once like her, and you know, and I walk into school one day, and there was this boat, and I was like, what the heck is this boat, you know, and someone wanted to start the first all-black high school rowing team. And at first I was like, nobody looks like me. I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, white people sport gets you killed. You know, you think of white people sport, it's like, it's expensive. You're in the middle of the ocean, or you're climbing a mountain, or you're jumping off a plane, and I'm not doing any of that. You know what I mean? But this guy came with this speech about the power of rowing. First, you overcome your fear of swimming. There's a lot of scholarship opportunities for it. You build a bond. You travel all the time. And I was like, man, that's all the stuff that's missing in my life. You know, and I tried this team out, and I eventually became the first captain. And the water was spiritual, right? You go out there, and there's no sirens. There's no broken street glass. There's no bullying. And you have a group of guys just pulling for each other just to get back to the dock safe. And that creates this magical rhythm, this meditation, this rhythmic. And it was just an amazing experience. And from there, we made history, right? And from there, I wanted to dedicate myself to the sport and giving more people who look like me the opportunity to experience that kind of change and give more access and opportunities to communities like I grew up in.
Right,
so that's a little bit of the Arshay Cooper story.
I wanted to touch on, you spoke about the youth trying to find love in gangs, and also like missing out on your youth. I can testify to that because I grew up in Harlem in the 90s. So now what I don't remember is too much of the gang violence. There were Bloods, you know, and people trying to get into the Bloods and stuff. That was more like uptown in the Bronx, and on Halloween you might have to worry because that was initiation day for them, and so people might have got sliced. But I also was a child who was held very close to my parents. So, but my mother, she was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 8, and she fought against it for 4 years. So I can identify with that. What, are you going to school? I'm thinking about like, is my mom okay? She's taking chemo. Is she, you know, does she eat? Can she hold the food down? When it started getting worse, when I got closer, she passed away when I was 12. So, you know, when it started getting closer to the end, she couldn't walk. She had to use a walker because it had spread to her bones and everything like that. So I'm thinking like, man, is she okay? Can she get up to use the bathroom? So there was times I would come home and she didn't make it. I would have to, you know, clean her up, clean up her space, give her a bath, make sure I cooked dinner, make sure I washed all the clothes for the family. You know, it was like that. It was me, my mom, and my dad. So whatever she did, I took the place of her the best I could, just to make her life easier. So it's true. You go to school, you can't concentrate. I used to daydream all day long. I just used to dream about having a good life, having an easy life. And it's true. Sometimes you know, if I didn't have those parents, my parents were very instrumental in showing me love. They were, you know, in the love that I've found for myself. They implanted that. But if you don't have that, you don't have anywhere else to go but outside. That's the cool breeze, you know, you think. Yeah. That's the cool breeze that you think you need when it's stifling on the inside. That I understand. In your book, A Most Beautiful Thing, I just listened to it on Audible this week. It was really good.
Oh, okay.
It was a good listen. I'm glad I got to read it. You talked about rowing, and some of the things that you talked about that stood out to me was that rowing is the ultimate team sport, right? You would think
Yeah.
Growing up in in the inner cities, you would say basketball or football or something. But rowing is the ultimate team sport. So knowing that, what are 2 to 3 life lessons you learned from teamwork, from the teamwork that you learned from rowing? 2 to 3 life lessons.
Yeah, I think number one is that there's 8 people in the boat, right? Or there's a 4. Someone doesn't show up, the boat doesn't move, right? And you can't just sub someone in who never heard of the sport. Like, you can't just. It takes hours of beating on your craft. So the number one lesson I learned was you can't do the work of 8 people. You have to find 8 people to do the work, and you'll get there much faster. And I think that's something that I relate to every day in life. Like, when we're trying to accomplish something, if that's building a house, right? We need everyone to play their part. If that's building the community, right? You need good cops, you need good teachers, you need good social workers, you need good business owners. You need everyone to do the work to move together, right? And I think that's a lesson that I learned when it comes to building bridges. Make sure that you have the complete set of folks that's going to help you move forward, or else you just can't go. You can't move. You'll move, but it won't be effective, right?
Right.
So that's one lesson. I think the other lesson I learned is that although we all were leaders, right, there has to be a point in all of our lives that we are required to follow. Right? You have to follow the person in front of you. And some people are like, I'm a leader, I'm not a follower. Right? Like, that, people tell you, you're a leader, so you're like, yeah, I'm not going to follow anyone because I'm a leader. But there's a point in your life where you are required to follow and to learn things, to move smoothly. Right? And I think that's something important to teach. If that's, a teacher, or even, me and you both did martial arts, right? One of the things Bruce Lee said was like, if I'm working with someone, I don't want you to come with a full cup and I learned this and this, and so I'm ready to go. He said, no, you have to empty your cup out so I can fill your cup with all the knowledge I've learned. And so it's important to always be open. Although you're a natural born leader, be open to following, right? And I think that's important. So that's a big lesson that I learned. And I think the third one is there's a huge culture around rowing where it says, leave the boathouse, leave your team better than you found them, right? Like, I want the boathouse, I want my teammates to be better than I found them every time I showed up. I want the world to be better because I'm here. And so when you have that mentality of hey, I'm going to meet with this young person for the first time, but I want to leave them better than I found them, right? I want to create a business, right, in the food industry. But I want to leave the food industry better than I found it. I want to leave the movie industry better than I found it. So you think of great actors, right, or great writers like James Baldwin. He left the world of writing better than he found it, and so that's the mentality that we learn every day from rowing, right? And so those are the 3 things that come to mind when I think about the sport. The great thing about it is that you can't just sub anyone in. You can't you can't go out unless everyone is there. You have to show up. You have to do your part.
Yeah, man. No, that's good because say there was a young woman or a young man that was watching this, they would know from what you're saying is true. You have to play your part. It takes a village too. You have to be able to work together with other people. It's not all about you. It's not all about them. It's about you guys together. You all are gonna have strength, but sometimes Arshay is going to be better with saying, well, I've never worked on the food line, so you probably could tell me better. Just if I'm preparing one part of the meal and you're preparing the other, I still have to do my part so your part can be done properly. That's how I think it works, right?
No, that's how it works.
Right. So when I order something in the front, it's not just somebody whipping it all up and then plop it on the plate. It's a line of people doing their own part over and over and over again, like assembly line, to make it happen. The second point, you have to be able to follow. What that makes me think of is, as a woman, we're strong. We can be strong. We can be independent. And we can forge a path for ourselves. But when you find a mate in life, somebody who you can trust to follow, that's important. It's important for you to be able to do that, or else you'll be butting heads and you won't make a life with each other. for the future, which goes into the next point that you make. Invest in those around you, or like make a way for those to come behind you. So that's for your children. That's for the kids, the youth in your community. You have to make a way. I'm big on that. Like if I go to work, it could be the smallest job. I am not gonna come here and just do it halfway. I'm gonna do my job as best I can, and then when somebody else comes, they can pick up where I left off. They don't have any questions. It's probably extra notes. All of that, like that's important for the foundation of the future, So I'm not going to hold you long. I know you got the family.
It's all good. It's all good. And I do want to say thank you for listening to the Audible. Before you get into your question, I would say that, it was funny because they was like, hey, you should do the voiceover. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do the voiceover. And they said, oh, there's some people that you can listen to, and who did a couple books, and then let me know who you like. So the guy who did it, I was like, oh, I like his voice. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite movies is, I don't know if you've seen it. It comes on like 1,000 times a year, the Temptations movie.
Come on, I've seen that
movie. yeah, 1,000 times, the Temptations. So David Ruffin had that manager, the light-skinned dude with the gray streak, gray hair, light-skinned dude. That's the guy who
what?
Yeah.
That's all kind of history going on right here, man. You're breaking all kind of. Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So I had to tell you that story.
That's cool. And you know what? The biggest thing for me, I was talking to in my the last podcast that I posted, which would probably be from here like 2 weeks before this one. I was just saying that I was in such a place when all of these things came to me, such a dark place. Sometimes when people say that, I'm like, what does that mean? But I was in that place, right? When just God put it on my heart to dream big. And this is not the life. My father used to tell me that too. That's fine. You think you from Harlem. You think you from America, but you're African. You are from Ulanasa tribe. You are your father's from Ayun. We know our people. We know our lineage. We know our names. You know all of that. That's who you are. So you can think you're one of these little American girls, but you're not. You don't belong to them. And you're this. Your name means this. He put that in me, but then, I forgot. Life was just going on, and I forgot. I didn't listen to that. I didn't understand. He would tell me, like, oh, those friends you have, that's fine if you hang out with them, but that's not your life. So you don't live the life like them. Like, but they're my friends, Dad. That's mean. But when God spoke to me and he was like, you have something bigger for yourself, I didn't see it. But that's the time when I started meeting so many different people. And you're one of the people who I met. And for me, your spirit was always really kind and open. We didn't interact a lot, but that's how your spirit was. You were always kind and open. And so it's just crazy to me. What I was telling her was I'm just realizing that once you step into your purpose and once you move forward into what you want to do, it just comes together. You don't have to beg people. You don't have to be afraid that they think you're using it. It just comes together because you're all moving as one. Is there some kind of uplifting message that you can give a kid who was like us, maybe in their teens, and they're feeling like life is beating them up? What steps can they take? Just, one foot in front of the other. What can they think, the self-talk that they can give to themselves, just to make it through?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think the first thing is that what I done when I was young, I did realize through watching black shows like Family Matters, A Different World, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, at watching those shows, I realized, wow, like not everyone with brown skin is poor, because everything was so poor, right? I'm like, wow, like Will Smith, like your dad don't have to be around, and you can still have joy in your life, right? Like you can go to college, just like watching A Different World, right? And Steve Urkel, right? You like be patient, right? And the good things will come to you. That Laura will come to you. Be patient, And so what I realized, though, from watching those shows is that everything that was kind of missing in my life. So what I did was wrote down everything that was missing. Okay, I don't have a dad, but I'm going to join the team with a coach who's going to be a father figure, right? And I want to show up all the time and ask you questions. I'm like, can I go? Can I go? Right? And it's a coach, right? A good coach. And that helps help and support in that way. I think the second thing, like my brothers were in gangs. I didn't want to do that. So I joined a team, a brotherhood, right? And we became a brotherhood. And those are the brothers that we looked out for each other in a positive way. You know, there was no food in the house. I always went to the after-school programs and the church, and, like, there's food, right? So things that were missing, the first step I took was like, you know what? I'm going to go out and find that. And what helped me to do that was this story that the coach told that I told in the book where he held up the money. He was like, who wants this? And everyone was screaming, I want it. He was like, who wants it? Everyone was screaming, I want it. And he's like, you know, and I wanted it, right? But I was just screaming and talking about it. And he said, if you want something, you can't just talk about it. You can't scream about it. You can't just tell your friends. Or in these days, you just can't post about it. Even if you want justice, right? If you want that college spot or that basketball spot, you have to get up and go get it, because what I've learned, it doesn't fall on our lap, but it can be somewhere around the corner, right? And so if we start moving in our purpose, right, that's when those things start coming to place, like you said. But there is a roadmap, right? And I wrote my book because I wanted to give young people my roadmap, right? You're doing this because you want to give young girls, other women who went through it, the roadmap, right? When when you travel, especially before the GPS came out, you had a roadmap. And I think the roadmap, and as a young person, is start looking up people's stories, listening to podcasts, right? Listening to teachers, really starting to listen to their roadmap and ask people. I used to ask a coach, so what's your story? How did you get here? You know, that is just, how did you get here, and how can I get there? So if you can ask, people will tell you. If you're young, find the courage to just walk into a church. Just do it, right? And start asking people what's their stories and how did they get there. That kind of courage really gets you to the place you need to be a lot more faster. And I believe that. I really, really just believe that. And so that's my advice to young people. Figure out what's missing, find what's missing, and have the courage to go to someone and ask them, how do I get there? I'm looking for the roadmap. And it's not easy to do, but you can do it. And that's kind of my advice for those young people.
That's good advice. That's good advice, and it's true. It's like I always used to have trouble with math, and my father, like I said, he's from Africa. He's from the middle of the desert, and every place in Africa is not the same. But where he was from, you went to Quran school, and then you figured something out to take care of the family, however men do, So he didn't have school, so he always told me, just ask somebody. There's a person who's a whole teacher who has the answer. Ask them. Ask for help. No problem in asking for help. Don't feel embarrassed. There's nothing wrong. There's people put in the world to help you, especially in certain places. You can't just ask any and everybody, but go to some place that you know is a positive place and ask. Somebody's going to help you. Somebody's going to be there for you.
Yeah, go to the positive place. You know what I mean? Like, when you're driving and you're like, man, I need directions. You ain't go to someone like that looks sketchy and be like, hey, give me directions. No, you're going to be like, oh, here's the family here. Of course they're going to tell me the right thing to do. And so churches, YMCAs, schools, there's a place that you find those families that you can ask for the roadmap of life that may be able to guide you the right way.
Right. And especially if you're from a hard area, the adults around who are placed there, especially like guidance counselors and stuff, you'll be able to know, but most of the time, they may be overwhelmed, but if they see a kid who really cares about themselves or cares to ask for help, they're going to go the extra mile for you. That's always the way it is. And it's that way until forever in life. Somebody wants the best for themselves, the other people around them is going to want the best for that person as well, the good people around them. All right, so every podcast, I do just 3 random questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have no rhyme or reason to them. They're just questions, and I just want the best answer. I think it's insightful, and somebody will learn something from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 1. What's your strongest belief?
God.
All right. That's it, plain simple. That's the first.
Plain simple, yeah, just simple.
Number 2, Name 5 of your favorite things.
All right. Eating. Yeah. Rowing. Right. I would say watching sports. All sports. Watching all sports on TV. And
Oh,
yeah.
that's
Um,
tough right now, right?
yeah. I know it's tough right now. Really tough. Really tough. Really tough. It's just hanging out with friends, right? Hanging out with
Okay,
friends. And the last and best thing is family time, right? Family time. Family with the wife and the daughter.
that's right. Okay, so the last one. How do you make your first best impression? Before you answer this, the reason why I chose this one is because, like I told you, I feel like you're good at that. I feel like you're good at introducing yourself and being like pleasant and like, oh, okay, he's a nice guy. So, but what do you say to yourself? Like, how do you make your first best impression?
I don't say, hey, what do you do? That bugs me in New York City. Hey, what you do? You know what I mean? People right away. People just right away. The first thing they say, when people introduce you, they'd be like, oh, what do you do? And they size you up. What do I do? I'm a person.
Right.
And I think for me, it's I kind of analyze people before I meet them, and like, they don't like to have a warm spirit, they don't like to stand up, but really, it's like, hey, I'm Arshay. What are you up to? What are you into? Like, how you doing? Like, it's energy. It's not really what I say. It's just energy. You know what I mean? And I'm like, hey, how you doing? And same conversations that everyone else will ask, but I start just saying, like, asking them what they care about. What do they do? And I add on to it. But for me, it's always been, and like you said, we didn't say much, but the energy, right, was great. And how do you get that energy, right? It's prayer, it's exercising, it's being near water, it's reading the right things, it's giving, right? It's having a kind spirit and a forgiving spirit, and so all those add to the energy that you have, what you do every day. So that energy is contagious. So, you can say all the right words, and I can be like, his energy, her energy sucks, and don't want to work with them. So I think energy is so important. What contributes to that energy is all the things that I mentioned, right? That just being a part of all those things will create a great fire in the relationship.
Well, Arsha, like I said, I really do thank you for coming on here. This is something that's new, but it's been on my heart and spirit for years. So I am so glad that you're a part of this. I feel like it's going to be worth something. This is going to do.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot. And I think when it comes to young girls, the best thing I ever heard is as a kid, even as a guy, when I was watching A Different World, is when one of the actresses said in the show, she told the girl, she said, you don't need a king to become a queen. And I thought that was just so powerful. You know what I mean? Like, trust your dopeness, your God, and be who you are. And if you just walk right in your purpose, all the right things will come. It may not be when you want it, man. It may be a long time for some people, right? But that means that there's some things that's still being worked on, right, and worked out, and some purpose that still needs to be fulfilled. But I appreciate you having me, and I hope everyone can be blessed by what you do and some of the words that we said today.
Amen to that. Amen to that.